This podcast is part of the How We Are network. For information on this episode and many other like-minded shows, visit howweare.org. That's HOWWEARE.org.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of 100 Words or Less, the podcast. I'm your host, Ray Harkins. Thank you for joining us. The downloads just keep growing, and it's amazing. I love it. I love meeting new people that email the show, 100wordspodcast@gmail.com. It's so exciting. There's so much fun stuff coming up, so many great guests. Welcome along for the ride. The guest this week is Matt Halpern. He is the drummer from a metal proggy, heavy, there's a million descriptors you could put on this band, Periphery. He is the drummer of that band, and he also runs an amazing service/website called Band Happy, where people, musicians that you enjoy, sign up for the site and give lessons. And I know that sounds painfully, dreadfully boring, but it's not, because it's a very interactive thing. You know, you sit there and basically you can use that time for kind of whatever you want, you know? You can either ask the artist to be like, yo, how'd you play that one part in that song? And it's just such a cool way to connect the people who are creating the music versus the people who are consuming it and want to become better at their own instrument. So Matt will tell you more about that. We get into it, but it's a service that if I had any musical talent whatsoever, which I don't, I would be super into this site. PropertyZack.com. Visit them. They are our good buddies, and they got some great content going on. Review the show on iTunes. Type in 100 Words Podcast, and you will find it, and then you could write some kind words about it. It's been a little slow recently, so if you haven't done it, I encourage you, because it helps the show. It helps this whole thing seem legit and awesome. And it also encourages people to check out the show, because the more rankings it gets, there's some algorithm in which our show gets tossed onto the front page occasionally. And it's amazing. Like, I really do notice the uptick in downloads when we just get placed on the front page of iTunes. So do that. And like I said, email the show, 100wordspodcast@gmail.com. Yeah, let's talk about Matt. So I didn't know him at all. Let me back that up. He's doing an amazing class today, April 9th, on that creativelive.com website that I've spoken about before. He's doing an amazing class called the Working Musician Playbook, where basically he tells you in his own personal experience how he's been able to make a living for himself being in a band, how to set up, finding booking agents, like just so many intricate details that you don't think about until you're in the middle of it. And sometimes that's too late to be able to get a quality person to work with your band, or to figure out basically how to exist in this modern musical landscape. So stop listening to the podcast, go right now to creativelive.com, and you will be able to stream his class. He's doing it over the next 2 days. So just tune in. It's free. Do it. So Matt, I didn't know him at all. I got this cool pitch to be like, hey, do you want to talk to Matt? And I was familiar with his band. I'd seen them once before, I think at a House of Blues show. I can't recall exactly. This Band Happy stuff I was already aware of, because they do a very cool service at Warped Tour where kids have the chance to win, a in-person lesson from, one of their favorite musicians. And it's just cool. Like, I've seen one or two of these classes in action, because they usually do it behind the scenes, backstage, that sort of stuff. And I've just walked by them occasionally and been like, oh, wow, it's that person, getting on the drums and showing kids how to play it. It's just, I don't know, it's a very cool thing. So I kind of jumped at the opportunity to speak to Matt. And to say the dude's a hard worker is an understatement. His work ethic is so admirable and awesome. And I think there's so many lessons that you can learn from that, no matter what field you are working in. It's the work, man. It's fun. It needs to be fun. You need to enjoy the process. So anyways, we'll talk about that. And here's my discussion with Matt. Sumerian, and you started releasing records through them. my own personal background is like I'm a punk and hardcore kid, and so metal is something I grew into loving as opposed to, being introduced to it when I was 11 or 12. And so it was really interesting for me to watch the community that was built around and the sort of reaction from the outside world. There's just such a bad rap on metal in general, in regards to people that view that style of music and are like, whatever, that's like masturbatory guitar work and just like, yeah, they're talented, but it's unlistenable. Did you find yourself having to kind of battle against those notions when you guys obviously first started, when you first started to get into like metal and stuff like that? Was there, did you see a disconnect there from like any sort of people looking down on you because you listened to, metal and you were kind of part of that community?
I think with my peers, everybody was really accepting, and overall, I think most people that I was friends with and I was, that know me, know I was in that style of music my whole life. So it wasn't weird for them, but it's funny, like, when I go out, even today, and I meet people, they're like, oh, you're in a band? Cool. Like, what kind of band is it? And I have to sort of like say that it's metal in a really approachable way.
Sure.
I have to be like, oh, we're like in a progressive metal band. But it's not your traditional metal. There's lots of singing and it's really groovy. It's not really crazy. To try to pad it. And I don't. It's weird that I think a lot of us feel like we have to do that in some ways.
Uh-huh.
Because metal itself is nothing that should be represented with a I don't want to say even negative tone, but metal is something that it's an established style of music. It's been around for years and years and years, and it's a gigantic market of bands and listeners. But I think it's still like not mainstream. Like in the I think sense of the general population. So in some ways, I think we always have to kind of pad it with, depending on who the audience is, to sort of get them to lend their ear and listen. And then once they do, they get it and they like it. But there's got to be I feel like I always have to spin it a certain way to get people to really, kind of even just give it a chance, if that makes sense.
You're putting quantifiers on it. You can't just simply say this thing, because people will assume that you sound like Judas Priest or something like that, or have some.
They think you're like a devil worshiper and that like you kill kids and like, you have like these satanic rituals that you take part in. It's that kind of thing. So
it's totally true, and I get it. I mean, even coming from like different subcultures judging different subcultures, where it's like, you look at the punk and hardcore community, and there is definitely, even though there's obvious crossover, there's definitely still weird connotations of certain bands where it's like, oh yeah, I don't like that band because they're a little bit too metal for me. And there's that judgment on that level too, where it's just like, dude, like, how about you just focus on like the fact that it's like good, quote unquote, heavy music? Like, how about that?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And especially too with like obviously the style that you play and you participate in. When I first started to hear the word, I don't even know how to pronounce it appropriately. Gent. Like once I started hearing.
It's funny. Not to cut you off.
Please.
So we're releasing a T-shirt on Periphery's web store right now, and this will clarify it for everybody. We're releasing a T-shirt. Have you seen the movie Django Unchained?
Oh, of course, yes.
Okay, so you know the part where he's like, the D is silent, hillbilly?
Oh, yeah.
You know that part?
Yeah.
So we're releasing a T-shirt that's basically, kind of references the gent thing that says the D is silent, hillbilly. So dude, now you know.
So good. Because I just realized I've literally never said it out loud to anybody until right now, even though that word has been in my quote unquote vocabulary for a while. But even that quantifier where it's just like, I mean, that's clearly a label that's put on you. It's not something that you've obviously decided to be like, oh, here we are, part of this community. But even right. that you have to put quantifiers in front of, where it's like, okay, yeah, we are a part of this, but at the same time, like, we're more than that. Like there's those, yeah, you have to explain yourself even more.
Definitely. People ask us all the time, what kind of style is it? How do you describe, like people say in interviews, like, you guys are a different form of metal. What's it like? Or where do you get your sound? Or how do you write? And honestly, we're all just music fans. We listen to all sorts of different styles. And what sort of comes out of that is just sort of like a melting pot of all those styles, and that's what it happens to be. And it's funny, we don't call ourselves a gent band. I think that the fans sort of coined that for us, so we embrace it, you know, because we like the fact that you know, our fans can put us in a category that in some ways separates us from others. But at the same time, you know, there really has been this negative sort of, I guess, you know, vibe around the whole Gent name, because it just became oversaturated so quickly. And, you know, I think we really, even for this album that we're working on now, working on our third record, you know, we're trying to really separate ourselves from those bands. And I don't know if it's something that we normally would ever intend to do, to like separate ourselves from a genre. But I think it's also important for us to just look at it for what it is, which is we have way more musical influences between all of us than just metal or gent, you know, if you will.
Right.
And I think we're just trying to get that out, you know, and really get that across to our fans and gain new fans based on, you know, the influences that we have. And that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it totally does. And you yourself, were you born and raised on the East Coast?
Yeah, Baltimore, born and raised.
And the what was your experience in growing up in Baltimore? Like, did you brothers and sisters? What was your family structure like?
Pretty normal, you know, family, like I guess middle class for the most part. You know, had an older sister who, you know, she's absolutely great, but we couldn't be more different. You know, I was always sort of faster paced than she was, I think, with a lot of things. I grew up quicker. Was always into, you know, music and that whole scene. And she's into it as well, but just we're very, very different ends of the spectrum in that regard. You know, both my parents are in business. So my mom has been a realtor for, you know, 40 years or something. And my dad was a business owner and now is also in real estate. So, you know, I guess one of the underlying tones of my family kind of upbringing was, you know, I was always exposed to business from a young age. So I grew up, you know, with looking at the world from that perspective, if you will, you know?
Sure. And now, and it's funny because I'll put this out there because I'm projecting this, but it's like, because I myself was also, you know, I've always been interested in the business side of things. I played in bands for years, was always like the business dude. But some people, especially when you talk about art and you use the word business, it's like, it's such a cold feeling, you know, but it's like, well, no, business in and of itself is also a creative outlet. Like, you have to be creative when you're either owning your own business or trying to do something on your own. You just need to have a business sense about it. It doesn't have to be this cold, like, corporate, because you just get this, like, you know, corporate monger, like, oh, I can't wait to, you know, crush everybody in order to be successful. And it's like, it doesn't have to be that way.
No, it doesn't have to be that way. And, you know, I think, you know, nowadays, really, I think anybody who's striving to focus their career around a creative outlet of some sort has to have some basic knowledge of business, because there's more and more competition out there. You know, there's more and more people that have, you know, crappy creative outlets, but just because they're good at networking, get the exposure over the people that aren't as good at it. So I think, you know, for those true artists out there, it behooves them to understand basic business, you know, basic business topics. I don't know if you want to call it tactics, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
Concepts. But also realize that, as you said, I mean, business can be extremely creative. You know, like you can create amazing ways to help other people. And to me, that's what business is all about. You know, the reason that you go into business is because you can help other people in some way, whether it means entertaining them through music or whether it means that you are an attorney that can help them with legal stuff, or whether you're, you know, an accountant. You know, you go into business really to provide a service that can improve the lives of, you know, the general population in some way. And there's so much creativity, you know, within that idea. And, you know, the product of that, of course, is, you know, being able to make a living and hopefully make some money. But I think, as you said, you know, people, I think, equate business to, you know, what is I guess kind of referred to as like the suits, so to speak, people that are just in it to make money. But you know what? The most successful businesses out there, you know, are in place to provide a service and to help a large number of people in some way, to help improve their lives. So
Sure.
I think if creative people were to look at business that way, and they're starting to, then I think we would have much more creative much more productive and, much more artistic businesses out there,
Yeah.
That's just my kind of long-winded opinion about it,
No, it's totally cool because I'm glad that you put it that way because like you said, because you were raised in an environment in which this sort of, entrepreneurial spirit was obviously fostered in you. I mean, like, obviously it applies directly to everything that you're doing now, not only with, your band, but Band Happy as well, where it's like, oh yeah, there's a thread that's connected.
Sure.
So as you were, as you're growing up in your formative years, high school and stuff like that, is that when independent music in general started to kind of, enter your ecosystem, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I just, I was always, into different bands, and I was always into these obscure bands, I remember in Baltimore, there's a band called Jimmy's Chicken Shack.
Oh, oh my God. I haven't heard that name in forever.
Yeah, just as an example, these are guys that I knew that I was playing shows, like my bands were playing shows with them, and there was independent band that ended up, getting on the radio and making it big, and it was really cool to see how that's possible to go from an independent local level, to a national level, with a pretty creative style of music, like that stuff was really cool. But there's a whole slew of bands that were like that. I remember even when I went out, I think I went to like my local record store. It was called Record and Tape Traders. And I bought, I want to say it was like a Metallica record or something, like towards the later years. Like it was, I don't know, Load or something. And I got a call from the music store. And they were like, hey, we gave you a sample of Deftones' My Own Summer. Did you get a chance to listen to it? What did you think of it? And it was at that time, yeah, like they were still kind of, they weren't as independent, so to speak. But I remember when like even bands like the Deftones were like breaking out and trying to expand from a smaller level to a larger level. And I just remember being intrigued by it and like feeling like, yeah, this is something that we can do, that I can do, that with the right people, I can do this too. So it was inspiring in a way.
And so was your entry point within, I guess, music in general, was it more, did you lean more towards the metal side, or did you get?
Well, my father was always listening. He had a pharmacy back in the day, and, I used to go there as a young kid, and the guys that worked for him, like in the back of the pharmacy, like his pharmacy techs and him, they were all into, heavier rock music or heavier metal. So I grew up, with classic rock, the Led Zeppelin and stuff like that.
Sure.
But then I was really exposed to bands like Queensryche, Metallica, Leatherwolf.
Oh, sure.
Obscure, fairly obscure stuff now, like Crimson Glory. I don't know if you know these bands or not, but like even Merciful Fate, King Diamond. So, it was a pretty, from the metal, I guess, umbrella, there was a lot of things that fell underneath that umbrella, and I was exposed to it. I loved it. I just loved, the tones of the music. I loved the heaviness. I loved the sort of sometimes eerie or scary vibe that came with it, because I was just always into that stuff. I like, scary movies. I like, more edgy things, I guess. Yeah, I was exposed to it from a young age, and but when I started playing drums, I was playing that kind of stuff, and then I was also learning the jazz stuff from my teachers that I was working with, and I was lucky to have some great mentors that opened up my mind at a young age, and basically said to me, look, it's great that you have an interest in this one style, but it's really important that you open your mind to other styles to be a better musician. And that was sort of, from a young age, my goal was to force myself to get into other styles, which I then ended up adopting and loving, but for the purpose of being a better drummer.
No, that's very interesting, because it's tough, because when you're younger, you're obviously putting a lot in your head in regards to like so many different bands of one particular genre. But then when you're 15 years old and you're listening to Bitches Brew for the first time, you don't get it. Your brain can't handle that depth, that in depth of a record. But like you said, if you are looking at it from the standpoint of like, okay, by focusing on this will hopefully improve my musicianship, and like you said, have a greater understanding of the music around you. I think it's great, because I do feel that people that, I guess, limit their experience from a musical perspective, even if they aren't playing, even if they aren't actually playing, an instrument, it won't do you any justice when you're 21, 22 years old, because you'll like, oh, my playbook is punk, Like, this is what I know. Like, oh, I don't listen to anything
Right.
else. It's like, yeah, it's a limiting experience, but it's cool that you forced yourself to understand stuff that might not have made sense to you.
I was lucky to have guys pushing me in that direction too, so I can't take all the credit for my open-mindedness.
Oh yeah,
I was forced to do it, but it was good. I mean that's something that I impress upon all of my students, is to make sure that they, dive into other styles, that they explore other areas of music, that, and I sort of let them know, based off of my experience, that, I was sort of apprehensive and gave a little pushback at first when my teachers told me to do this. But once I sort of gave in and listened, I found so many other inspiring things that I would feel like deprived of if I didn't have them now. To them, they get it. They get it.
When you were doing all this stuff, drumming and obviously, getting into, heavier, darker music, whatever, were your parents, was there ever a point where they were like, okay, it's cool Matt's into this, but like he's getting into some weird stuff that we have no context for? Like, was there any friction from that perspective?
No, I was really lucky. I mean, like I said, my dad was into that style as well.
That's good.
From a young, from his formidable years, I guess he was listening to that kind of stuff. And my mom really just, she's great. She just supports whatever I do now, and she supported me for years and years and years. And as long as it, I think she saw that I wasn't like affected in a way where I was like carving things into my arms, like on the Slayer records and like stuff like that. I think she saw that it wasn't affecting me negatively, so there was no real harm.
That's good.
In that. So, but they've always just been super supportive, to be honest.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, it's great when because there's that delicate balance that you strike, especially as a parent, where it's like, okay, if we come in, both guns blazing, take all their records away, take all the questionable material that we think they have, it's just going to end up that you're going to find a different way to get that stuff. And it's like, it's just, it's that never ending battle. But it's like, if you do find that balance where it sounds like your parents did, where they're like, okay, as long as he's not exhibiting signs of like delinquency, quote unquote, then we'll be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Drums is a very, appealing thing from a young person's perspective, just because you obviously get to hit the crap out of stuff. Any other notion in your head that you wanted to do any other instrument, or drums like, yo, this is it. This is what I'm focused on. I'm doing this. Yeah,
pretty much that. I mean, drums sort of chose me, and I didn't really care or have any interest to learn other instruments. And, looking back now, I think it would have been really smart for me to learn about, how to play basic guitar stuff or learn keyboard, just so I could express to my bandmates even better, like the ideas that I have in my mind. But at the end of the day, drums are definitely my thing, and I'm glad that I've put so much energy into that because, I think my mind has just been, I've been doing drums for so long. I have a rhythmic-based mind. So in that regard, I have my role in the band that, it serves a purpose. So, with that in mind, drums, like I said, drums definitely chose me from the day I was born. And no, I mean, I just never really was into it. Even now, like, I know I should learn guitar. I just don't care.
Yeah.
I know it's like,
it's okay.
I just don't care. I don't have like, I don't sit there and go, what, maybe I should pick up an acoustic guitar and go practice. It's like, I don't even have an acoustic guitar. I'm just going to go play drums. Sorry.
Right. Sorry. I don't have time for that. And so, and the notion of playing in bands, that was always something you were really focused on as well? Or did that kind of just develop because, you obviously had a talent with drums? And honestly, drummers aren't easy to find, like, period. Like, that is always the most difficult element, at least in the my musical experience, of like finding not only a good drummer but a reliable drummer. And so was it that focus where it's like, yeah, I really want to play in bands and I want to perform live?
I think so. I mean, I grew up as like the good part of the MTV generation where I was watching awesome videos before I would go to bed at night as a kid, and I saw these guys performing and like looking awesome on stage, and I think naturally that's what I wanted to do, and that's just what I sort of gravitated towards.
What was the first band that you played, like an actual show at, like where you were, you went in front of people and you played music? Because I presume it wasn't, the musical act you were in now, or was it?
No, it was really, come to think of it, it was like when I was probably, I don't know, 9 or 10, and I was playing with a group of my friends at my summer camp talent show. We practiced and we got together and we made a band out of it. We played some other shows at little halls and things like that. But I mean, I was playing bands, around that age, between like 9 and 12 is when I really had my first sort of show experiences,
Dude, I'm sure at that point it was like, in a way, novelty. If people are looking at you and being like, yo, who's this 10-year-old that's, totally, for lack of a better term, like shredding on drums, that's like, oh, this kid's got a good set going on. Did you find a lot of people gravitating to you because of that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think a lot of it's just, luck. I really do. And hard work. I had really great teachers from the get-go. But yeah, I mean, I'm my own worst enemy, and I'm also my own biggest critic. So what I think about my drumming and what I think I've done my whole life, my opinion is it sucks. Mm-hmm. But I've had people come out to me, for years, even when I was like 9 or 10, being like, whoa, like, you're sick, you're awesome. And it's like, yeah, you don't need to lie. Like, you don't need to tell me that. Like, I can take the honesty. You can tell me I suck. But no, I mean, like, I don't know how to say that without seeming like it's a bragging thing, because I'm definitely not bragging. Was always lucky enough to have compliments coming my way and bands wanting to hire me and play with me. But I think it's a struggle that all artists go through, believing in themselves and believing in their own abilities. At some point you have to believe it to a degree. For me, the way I look at it is like, the minute I stop climbing that mountain is the minute that I might as well just quit. And I'm never going to be to the point where I want to be. But that's the whole point of, my passion in drumming. It's like, to me, it's a lifelong journey that I'm going to continue to travel on, for the rest of my life, I should say, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally. And so was the notion that, as you were, graduating high school and, was the notion that like, hey, I am going to make a living out of playing drums no matter what that takes? Or was there another kind of path for you that you were looking in, that you were interested in, different elements of school? Or how did that play out?
I mean, I did a lot of different things, like from high school into college. I did go to school, so I got my real estate license at the end of high school when I turned 18. And from there, I went to school for public relations and public speaking. And I definitely always wanted to do stuff within music. I had a band that was local to Baltimore, and I didn't want to work full time. So I had this opportunity to go to school and learn, and that's what I did. But music was always at the center of everything. It was definitely the goal to get out on tour, to go play music and to do these things. It took time for me to figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
Like, how do you get there? But that was always the goal.
Right.
For sure.
Right. Well, no, it's cool because, I mean, it's, and honestly, it's like, I mean, I'm sure as you've noticed, no one talks to the drummer of a band. Like, that's just a reality. Like, unless you are obviously this person that's like, has, an insane story. It's like no one is interviewing the drummer. Everyone interviews the singer, maybe the lead guitarist. And so the fact that you were able to develop not only your skills, obviously, as a drummer, but then how to communicate. Like, in just talking to you now, it's like, okay, yeah, like you're a well put together human being. Whereas other, sometimes other people like that are just, so focused on drumming and that's it, honestly don't develop social skills. Like, they just don't know how to communicate, and they're kind of, awkward, weird dudes. And so it's good that you had this, kind of other irons in the fire where you were like, okay, yeah, do some real estate and, learn about, like you said, PR. It just, it adds to your holistic nature as a person, rather than just like, oh yeah, there's that, really good drummer, and just don't talk to him. He's kind of weird,
Not necessarily in defense of drummers by any means, but, I think any artist, whether it be music or other forms of art, who simply only focus on their craft and nothing else, is going to be a bit awkward, because they're going to be focused on one thing. That would be like if all you did was focus on playing guitar and nothing else. I think that there's in some ways that's great, because you become an amazing artist. You put in your hours and you become an outlier, so to speak. But at the same time, I think the social experiences and the things that we do as human beings outside of our art are what allow us to make art. Those situations, those experiences, the things we learn, really dictate what our art is, how it's put out and how it looks, because without life experience, how can you really be creative? Yeah, you can become technically great. Technically, yeah. I mean, there's guys that I know that sit in their basement and they work on their right foot or their left foot or their left hand for hours and hours and hours. But if you tell them to play a creative drum solo or a creative groove, they have no idea how to do it because they don't necessarily have outside influences or outside experiences that they can put into their art. And I think that's something that applies to all artists that I really hope that people start realizing. That's a big thing that I teach my students. My students come to me and they say, hey, I'm practicing 5 hours a day. And it's like, yeah, maybe you should do that once or twice a week, but the other days, cut down on the practice and go live. Go have some experiences. Go take a walk in nature. Go hang out with a friend. Go do something else, because you need to have a balance and you need to have outside experiences to put into your music. And it's funny, you touched on a passionate topic of mine, which is making sure that the musicians of the future, the guys that I'm teaching and the people that I think, my generation of musicians and artists have the ability to inspire. I want to make sure that that new generation are not a bunch of robots. Mm-hmm. With computers and technology the way it is, everybody's already living in a box, so to speak, by not communicating in person, rather by communicating over text message, by playing video games instead of going out and playing outside. I just want to make sure that musicians don't ruin music because they're in a box. If that makes
No, it's I mean, I think that's such an important point. I mean, it leads me perfectly into, obviously with all the stuff that you're doing with Band Happy. You look at, nothing for me. I don't play any instruments. I've always sang in all my bands. Going into Guitar Center is the worst thing of all time for me. I want to kill myself every time I go in there just because it's not my world. Sure. But in looking at, what you are doing with Band Happy, and just from an outsider's perspective and the way I look at it, like you said, it's inspiring. And it has a soul. You can look at a lot of things and, people, once you reach a certain age, I feel like you have a good sense of sniffing out the stuff that's just crap. And you can tell that it's kind of soulless, for lack of a better term. But it's, sure. Not knowing that is such a passionate part about what you're trying to, instill in your own students, and obviously the people that you enlist to obviously work on Band Happy with you. It's just so cool to hear that actually materialized, whereas I would have never known that, but I had that feeling. It's cool. So I'm sure the challenge is when you do have your students come to you that are just are so myopic in their focus. Is it a struggle for you to try to steer them in those other directions, or are they just no, I don't want to do that, Matt? That doesn't make sense. You know what?
I think I should say no. It's not really a struggle, and here's why. Because the goal of Band Happy, the one of the goals I should say of Band Happy is connect young students, young musicians. They don't even have to be young, just fans of music or musicians that are playing with the people that inspire them, and not just connect them by having them watch a video. Actually have a live connection where they can talk to someone that inspires them, and they can get to know them as a person just as much as they're looking at them as a teacher. And that's a big, at least for me and a lot of the artists that I've had the privilege of working with and help them sort of, start, building their teaching methods. I've really instilled in them the importance of letting these fans, letting the people that are learning from them get to know them as people, because the people that are teaching, they're artists, they're touring musicians, or they're successful musicians in some way. They got great stories. They're really usually personable. They know how to communicate. They're in bands. These are skills that I think need to be taught by the right people to these younger musicians. I guess my point is, I think a lot of fans, when they go to take lessons with me or with assuming it's going to go a certain way and be this very, very old school teaching kind of experience. And it's not, they get to see us as people, and we get to help mold them as people. And it's a big responsibility, which is why we want to have the right people teaching. I guess to answer your question based on what I just said, I think it's really easy to make sure that these kids get the right direction going forward once they take advantage of this opportunity, because they get to learn and see directly from people and how, that inspire them, how they live their lives, how, they go about committing to their art, committing to their music, how they go about working on what they're trying to improve upon. I don't know. Does that make sense?
No. I mean, I think it's great because all you've done, you're providing a context in which for people to meet. And I think that's what's
right.
Honestly, it's what's so important. It's like, that's why I enjoy doing, this podcast, because it's like the idea of being able to just like sit down with a person for, 45 minutes to an hour and like talk and actually have a dialogue about it. Like, it's hard to do that. Like it's
sure, because
everybody's so busy. Everybody has all of these things going on. And so that's all you've done. You've provided a context in which people can meet up, that obviously there's an exchange of goods and services from a business level, but you want to create a holistic experience. I think that's just, that's awesome. That is the structure in which you're trying to push people towards, as opposed to like, oh yeah, dude, just hop on YouTube and watch some drum tutorials. It's like that, that, like you said, it's heartless.
There needs to be more live, real interaction. And, the way that we do it is either face-to-face over video chat, where you're talking to the people are live and they're talking to each other, or it's in person where you're having a real experience, in the flesh. I think that's really important. And look, I mean, there is that business side of it, but the goal is to make sure that there is an equal exchange on either side, that the fan is paying for an experience that's going to be worthwhile to them and inspiring to them, so that they can then, continue along their path a lot happier and hopefully with better guidance. And for the artist that's teaching, God knows it's hard to make a living as a musician. And my goal, this whole thing started very, very, very organically, because I myself, as a touring musician, needed to supplement my income. Teaching was the best way to do it. And why not open myself up to the fans that support me in a way that I can help them be better musicians or better fans? And why not charge a little bit for that time? Because really the fans are more than willing to pay for that, because they know it supports their favorite artist, and they also are getting something from it. It's not just like, I mean, forgive me for saying this, not to knock a meet and greet or a VIP experience that's kind of soulless, but, it's not like, here, come shake my hand and pay for that experience. It's, dude, you can meet me at the show, whatever. You come see me at the merch booth, see me afterwards. But if you want to sit down and talk and let me pass on some knowledge or show you how to play the drums better, tell you how it really is for me, like, that's something I really think that fans should be willing to pay for, because it's real experience. It's like why people pay to go to school. Why do you pay to go to college to learn from professors? You go to learn from professors because they're study people. They know their topics of education, and you pay for that education. To me, it's the same thing. It's just a different kind of education, and it's different kinds of teachers. It's teachers that, make music for a living rather than research or study books for a living. And obviously professors do much more than that. I'm not saying anything negative there. I'm simply just saying it's the same kind of thing. And I think I really do see it as a win for everybody involved, because it's just a positive experience, like it really is. The fans can learn something. They can really become disarmed and get to know their favorite artists as people, and the bands get to know their fans better and connect with them better. They can make some extra cash, and everybody involved with it is just like, that was sweet. Let's keep doing it. And it's funny. I don't know if this is relevant to the conversation, but I was with my partner today. We were talking about business that we're working on now, and there's a pretty staggering number that he said to me. And, one of the goals of our company, one of the mission, like the main mission of our company, is to create products that improve the lives of musicians. And from the artist standpoint, we looked at our numbers, and we've helped artists make almost $500,000 by teaching.
That's amazing.
And we've connected them with fans, that are willing to support their favorite artists with that amount of money. Like, that's like mind blowing to me, because it started as a small little idea in my mind, and we've managed to create a system somehow as you said, to connect the artists and the fans, that has helped support these artists, with such a big number in their pockets to live, to eat, to continue to do music and not have to do other things. That's the reason why we're doing this. That is the goal. And I think the fans absolutely understand that, and it's obvious that they're willing to support it. So,
yeah,
and then, like I said, that's not money we've made. That's money that we've helped artists be able to make to support themselves.
No, that's huge. I mean, that's something that, you could directly say, like, without this, like, this money would not have existed for these people to make, which is amazing.
Yeah, it's inspiring for me, and it makes me realize how much effort I need to continue to put into this business, because we can continue to do good things for artists. We can continue to support them and give them more outlets and more revenue streams and more connections, so that they can continue to create art and not have to be distracted by it. I used to wait tables to help pay for my artistic addiction, so to speak. I used to do other things, and that can really take the wind out of your sails in some ways when you're trying to be an artist. So, Band Happy was always, the goal of it was always to provide another way for artists to stay playing music and stay within the realm of music to make a living. You know what I mean? That was definitely a goal, and it's working. So it's inspiring.
Yeah.
It really is.
No, for sure. That's awesome. And I want to hit on one last thing, and then I'll let you go. You strike me as a very, obviously intense and driven individual. And I mean, I myself identify with that as well. But
sure.
a problem that I personally have, and I know I've spoken to a few people on the show about this, how do you slow down? How do you obviously be able to be like, okay, I need to take a break from this. I need to, recharge, and obviously still, like, in talking to you, you still have the fire and you still have the passion, but kind of like to make sure that you obviously don't burn yourself out. That is a constant concern, especially as you grow older within the context of music and artistic endeavors, because, sometimes it's like people at 25 and they're just like, yo, dude, I'm out. This is tiring. This is hard to keep up that intensity, So how do you yourself kind of balancing all of that stuff? Because you do have a lot of moving parts.
Sure. Well, I think for me, I definitely have, I have a passion for it. And as I just said, too, it's like now I have a real reason to stay in the game, because it truly is helping other people. And I feel like, that's why we're all here on this earth, to unite, to help each other, to make a positive experience for everybody's lives. And we all play a part in that, no matter what. So that underlying thing, without getting too, philosophical and emotional and stuff, I mean, that's something that keeps me going every day. But, literally, I mean, I'm lucky because as a musician, as an entrepreneur, so to speak, I can make my own schedule, and with everything that I have going on, it's very easy to be driven to, to want to work and to want to reach my goals and so forth. But I can make my own schedule. When I really feel inspired to work, I can work, whether that's 2 in the morning or whether that's 7 in the morning, and when I'm feeling tired, it's taken me time to learn how to balance it. Because I used to totally burn myself out, but you learn how to compartmentalize and say, you know what, I've worked as much as I can today productively on this topic. If I do any more, it's not going to get me any further. It's better to come back to this with a fresh mind. And, for me, I'm pretty simple as a dude, like the things that I like to do in life are pretty simple. I love my work. I love playing music, but I love my dogs. I love my girlfriend. I love food. So as long as I can pay attention to those things every day for some part of the day, then I can keep myself sane.
Right. Right. No, that's true. Yeah. I think the key word that you use there is compartmentalize, because you do, there are times where it's like you literally just be like, yo, dude, after 4:00, I'm checked out. Sorry. Like this is what I'm doing. I'm not taking any calls. I'm not doing any emails. And so it's a learning process, but I think that you hit on the key word there that I think that is important for people to learn in order to not get burnt out, at a younger age and lose that fire.
And it's simple. You simply just have to ask yourself, at some point every day, you have to kind of just do it's almost like an auto save on a computer. You should say to yourself, is what I'm doing right now still productive? And would it be more productive to stop and do something else, or should I keep going down this path because I'm still being productive? And if the answer is, yeah, you're still being productive and you can keep going, and you should keep going. But if the answer is, maybe I should take a break because I feel like I'm not going to be productive for me or anybody else, and at that point, stop, walk away. And here's what I compare it to. Here's maybe like a good final thought.
Sure.
If you play video games ever, it's like sometimes you get really far in the game, you're progressing, you reach a level or a boss that you just try and you cannot beat it. You get frustrated, you can't progress, you can't beat the damn boss. And eventually you throw the controller down, you walk away and you go do something else. And then whether it's the next day or whether it's 5 hours later, you come back and like within 3 tries, you beat the boss. That's the thing. You can't force it if it's not working. You have to take a breath, walk away, and when you come back, you'll be ready to complete the task. You'll be more prepared. And that's a good lesson in life. It's like being successful doesn't mean making lots of money. Being successful doesn't mean like that you're constantly just winning and everything. Being successful is understanding that there's going to be challenges and not every day is going to be a big win, but every day there should be small victories, little things that you can say that you did, even if it's as little as I got this much work done today that I wouldn't have done if I didn't do this work. That's a small victory. Like you've accomplished something. And I think with life, it's like, we all try to do so much. We all try to be like, the big guy or the big girl trying to impress others or to, impress our parents or even impress ourselves. And it's like, at some point you just have to stop and say, you know what, like it's a journey. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. At the end of the day, we're breathing, we're working hard. And like I said, you have to take, I guess, solace in the little things that you experience in life and be happy with those things, because at the end of the day, once you reach your gigantic goal, it's going to come and go really quick, just like everything else comes and goes. Like if you win the lottery or something, okay, you can only win the lottery once. And then it's like, okay, now what do I do? Oh, I still have to go on living,
right.
And you still have to wake up every day. So don't build everything up into these like big, ginormous things that if you don't reach this gigantic goal, your life is over. Again, compartmentalize. Look at what the journey is and how many small things and relationships and people that you have to work with and all the things that go along with reaching your goals. Like the successes there in the small manner are what make life worth living and how you should really look at everything. Take your time. Falling down doesn't mean the end. It just means you have to pick yourself back up and find the silver lining. And, just, I guess the simple way to say it is just focus on the small victories every day.
Totally. You have the best piece of advice I've ever received on this is like, you have to be a fan of the process. Like you have to enjoy the sometimes hard backbreaking work of like putting something together in order to feel like, oh, that was cool. I enjoyed that. As opposed to, like you said, when you get to that top of the mountain and then you're like, oh, cool. There's like 35 more mountains I'm supposed to climb up because I've set these weird arbitrary, success posts in my life. It's like, well, no. Did you enjoy climbing the mountain? It was hard sometimes, but I enjoyed it because I ultimately, like you said, built those small things up to get me to that summit.
Yeah, it's about the experience. And really, Mike Mowry actually said to me one time, and I'll never forget that he said this, this a couple of years back. He's like, dude, it's all about the journey. It really is. It's all about the journey. And never take that for granted. And look, the fact that you and I are on a phone call right now and have a phone to use that's a small victory, because a lot of people in the world, man, they don't have this luxury. They don't have phones. Yep. They don't have homes to go home to. They don't have a car to get in. And I think it's really important for people to check themselves and remember that, like, it could be worse. And, you could be in a much more difficult situation than most of us are. And some of us are in very difficult situations. And the thing is, the only people that are going to get us out of those situations are ourselves. We're not owed anything. We're not entitled to anything. And it does take hard work, but that is what life is about. Life is about going along this journey, doing the best you can for what you believe in and what you want to do, and making sure that you stop along the way and say, you know what, I've learned something. Here's the victory. And at least I'm able to put food in my mouth, hopefully, and have a place to sleep.
Yeah.
And if one day you have a gigantic place to sleep and you can eat the best food in the world, then that's fantastic. Hopefully, even at that point, you start coming up with other goals to help other people get to that point, because that's what, like I said, it's all about giving. It's all about helping. It's all about sharing. And I think in any in any field of work, that should always be the underlying cause, even though it's not. I think that's the point of what we're all trying to do is, even with your podcast, you want to educate the listeners and inspire the listeners, I think, to, at the end of the day, just be better human beings. And, that's going to be better for everything they do and everybody that you come in contact with.
Yeah. No, totally.
And look, I don't know anything. I'm just one dude. I'm just doing what I believe, so all the stuff I'm saying could be complete bullshit and you don't have to listen to it, but it's just my opinion. And I, I don't take myself very seriously at all. I just do what I hope can help, other people. That's all.
I will go ahead and say you don't need to discredit all of what you said right there, because you're hitting on very important points, because all you're doing is you're speaking from your experience, and that's all any of us can do. And then ultimately that will hopefully put people in a positive mind frame to be like, oh yeah, I take all of these 30 people that I trust or I've listened to or I care about, and then I build the composite that is my own life as well. So you're good, Matt. You're good.
Thanks, man. I'm trying.
Yeah,
I'm trying.
No. Well, I really appreciate you hanging out, and I know that you're on to another endeavor after this, so I'll let you go.
Awesome, dude. Ray, thank you very much.
Pretty rad chat, right? I thought so. And so go to bandhappy.com. Tune into Creative Live like right now. He's teaching a class right now. Yeah, it's just I love it when people have an idea and they execute it and it doesn't suck. Because, there are a lot of ideas, and I am guilty of it myself, where it's like I, kind of put something out to the general public and it's half-formed and it's just a cool idea. I just want to get it out there. But Matt really took the time in what he's been doing with Band Happy, and obviously his band as well. They are a very successful thing. I appreciated his time, and I appreciate everybody that made this particular show happen, because there's a lot of emails flying around about it. So tune in next week. We will have some other great guests, and oh man, we're like 2 weeks away from the 2-year anniversary. Get excited. The producer for the show is Tom Richfield. Visit propertyofzach.com and visit 100wordspodcast.com. And I'm on vacation right now. Oh, so relaxed. Playing golf, hanging out with the family. Good times. I'll talk to you next week. Bye.